Boy demands dog sleep in his bed. What happens next? Leaves parents speechless. Harrison was a bright and curious 10-year-old boy, the kind who could light up a room with his infectious energy. He lived with his parents, Paul and Emily, in a cozy suburban neighborhood where life was predictable and serene. Harrison had always loved animals, but his life changed forever the day Leo arrived. Leo was a golden retriever with a coat that gleamed in the sunlight like liquid gold and eyes that seemed to hold secrets untold. He wasn't just any dog. Leo came with a story, one that tied him to the family in an unusual way. The story began with a phone call from a distant relative, someone the family hadn't heard from in years. They learned that Leo's previous owner, a reclusive but kind-hearted elderly man, had passed away unexpectedly. The man's only wish was that Leo find a home where he would be loved as much as he had been. Harrison's parents, though initially hesitant, felt a sense of duty. And when Harrison overheard the conversation, he was adamant. "We have to take him," he pleaded, his young heart full of compassion. "He deserves a family." When Leo arrived, the connection between him and Harrison was instantaneous. The moment the golden retriever stepped through the door, his tail wagged vigorously, as though he already knew he belonged. Harrison, barely able to contain his excitement, knelt down and wrapped his arms around Leo. It was as if they had known each other forever. From that day, the two became inseparable. Wherever Harrison went, Leo followed, whether it was playing in the backyard, reading in his room, or even sitting quietly during homework sessions. Leo's presence brought a newfound warmth to the household. Paul and Emily noticed how their son seemed happier, calmer even, with Leo around. The dog had an uncanny ability to sense Harrison's moods. If Harrison was upset, Leo would rest his head on the boy's lap, his eyes filled with understanding. If he was excited, Leo would match his energy, bounding around with uncontainable joy. It was a bond that went beyond the usual affection between a boy and his dog. It was as if they shared a silent language, an unspoken understanding. But there was something deeper, something that even Harrison couldn't quite put into words. Leo seemed to know what Harrison needed before he even asked. One evening, as the family watched television, Harrison fell asleep on the couch. When Emily went to carry him to bed, Leo followed and refused to leave the boy's side. That night was the first time Harrison insisted, "Leo has to sleep with me." His parents, though touched by their son's attachment, gently refused. "Dogs belong in their own bed, sweetheart," Emily explained. Harrison nodded reluctantly, but gave Leo a long hug before saying goodnight. The following nights only deepened the mystery. Harrison became more insistent about wanting Leo in his room, claiming the dog helped him sleep better. "It's like he keeps the bad dreams away," Harrison tried to explain, but his parents dismissed it as a child's whim. Still, Paul and Emily couldn't deny the subtle changes in their son. He seemed more at ease, more confident, as though Leo's presence provided a sense of security that nothing else could. Despite their skepticism, the parents couldn't help but wonder about the depth of the bond forming between their son and the dog. It was beyond the playful companionship they had expected. Leo often behaved as though he understood every word Harrison said, responding with a tilt of his head or a gentle nudge. Harrison, for his part, treated Leo not just as a pet, but as a confidant, sharing his thoughts and feelings in a way he didn't even with his parents. What struck Paul and Emily most was the way Leo looked at Harrison. It wasn't the eager gaze of a dog hoping for a treat or a game of fetch. It was something more profound, almost human. Leo's eyes seemed to say, "I understand you." And for Harrison, that silent reassurance was everything. Little did the family know, this bond would soon reveal a secret so extraordinary, so otherworldly, that it would challenge everything they thought they knew about life, love, and the connection between humans and animals. Every day, Harrison and Leo found new ways to deepen their friendship. The backyard became their haven. Harrison would toss a frisbee, and Leo, with his boundless energy, would leap into the air to catch it, often tumbling into the grass and making Harrison burst into laughter. On quieter days, they would sit under the shade of the old oak tree, Harrison reading his favorite adventure books aloud, while Leo rested his head on the boy's lap, seemingly captivated by the sound of his voice. Mealtimes were another testament to their growing bond. Harrison, though naturally a picky eater, suddenly developed a habit of sneaking bits of food under the table to Leo. Despite his mother's disapproving gaze, he couldn't resist sharing. "He's my best friend," Harrison would say with a shrug and a cheeky grin. The golden retriever, ever patient, would wag his tail in gratitude, his loyalty to Harrison becoming more evident with each passing day. As their days together grew longer, so did their nights. Harrison began to plead with his parents to let Leo sleep in his bed. "He helps me sleep better," Harrison explained earnestly one evening at dinner. "I don't feel scared when he's there." His parents, however, were less than convinced. They cited concerns about hygiene, discipline, and the importance of boundaries between pets and their owners. "Leo has his own bed," his father would say, firm but kind. "You'll have to get used to sleeping on your own." Harrison, undeterred, continued to make his case, often sneaking into Leo's sleeping area late at night just to be near him. His parents would find him curled up on the floor beside the dog, fast asleep, with Leo protectively nestled next to him. They couldn't deny the warmth and security Harrison seemed to derive from Leo's presence, yet they remained steadfast in their decision, hoping the phase would pass. But the bond between Harrison and Leo was not a mere phase, it was something much deeper. Subtle moments began to hint at this. When Harrison was upset or frustrated, Leo would instinctively nuzzle him, calming him almost instantly. When Harrison fell off his bike in the park one afternoon, it was Leo who rushed to his side first, whining softly and licking his face until he smiled again. There was an understanding between them, one that words could not explain, but one that was undeniably real. Unbeknownst to his parents, Harrison's nights were often haunted by vivid dreams and a sense of unease he couldn't quite articulate. When Leo was by his side, those feelings vanished as if swept away by an invisible force. The dog's steady breathing and comforting presence acted like a shield, guarding Harrison from whatever fears lurked in the shadows of his mind. Harrison's parents began to notice these subtle changes, though they couldn't pinpoint the cause. "Have you noticed how much calmer he's been lately?" his mother remarked one evening as she folded laundry. "It's like Leo has some kind of calming effect on him." His father nodded but dismissed it as the natural comfort of having a pet. Neither of them realized they were on the cusp of uncovering something extraordinary. The tension between their parental instincts and their son's unwavering attachment to Leo was palpable. Each night Harrison would plead his case with growing desperation, and each night his parents would gently deny him. Yet as they watched their son and the golden retriever grow closer, they couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this bond than met the eye. It was as if Leo understood Harrison in a way no one else could, and though they couldn't explain it, they couldn't ignore it either. This delicate balance of affection and doubt set the stage for what was to come, a series of events that would challenge everything Harrison's parents thought they knew about their son, their dog, and the mysterious bond that tied them together. That night began like any other. The house was quiet, bathed in the dim glow of nightlights strategically placed in the hallway and bedrooms. Harrison had gone to bed with Leo lying peacefully on his favorite spot near the boy's desk. The family was adjusting to life with their new pet, and things seemed ordinary until the scream shattered the stillness. It was a scream unlike any Harrison's parents had heard before. Piercing, desperate, filled with terror. The kind of sound that makes a parent's heart drop and instincts take over. Within seconds, his mother was out of bed, running toward Harrison's room with her husband close behind. They flung open the door, their breaths quick and labored, expecting to find their son in a state of physical distress or facing some tangible danger. But the scene they encountered was baffling. Harrison sat upright in bed, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear, tears streaming down his cheeks. He clutched his blanket as though it were his only lifeline. His breathing was erratic, his chest rising and falling as if he had been running from something unseen. Yet, there was no sign of what could have caused such terror. No shadows moving, no sounds out of place. The room was exactly as it had been when they tucked him in. "Harrison," his mother called out, rushing to his side. She placed her hands gently on his shoulders, but he didn't respond immediately. His gaze was distant, as if he were looking through her, trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape. His father turned on the bedside lamp, the soft yellow light spilling over the room, revealing Leo now standing by Harrison's bed, his head tilted in concern. The golden retriever let out a soft whimper, almost as though he was trying to communicate his own unease. As his mother softly shook him, Harrison finally blinked and seemed to return to reality. He looked at her with a mix of confusion and fear, unable to form words. His lips trembled as he tried to explain what had just happened, but no coherent sentences came out. Before his parents could press him further, Leo made a sudden movement. The dog jumped onto the bed with a kind of urgency, his body language protective but calm. He circled once, twice, then settled himself down right beside Harrison, pressing his warm, furry body against the boy's trembling frame. What happened next was nothing short of astounding. Harrison, who moments before had been consumed by panic, immediately seemed to relax. His breathing slowed, his tense muscles softened, and the tears stopped flowing. He leaned into Leo, burying his face in the dog's fur, as if it were the safest place in the world. Within minutes, Harrison's eyes grew heavy, and he fell back onto his pillow, his small hand still gripping Leo's collar. The transformation was so quick, so complete, that his parents could only watch in stunned silence. They exchanged a look, their confusion mingled with a growing sense of wonder. What was it about Leo that had this effect on their son? How could the presence of a dog calm him in a way that neither of them could? That night, they decided not to move Leo. The dog stayed curled up beside Harrison, his steady breathing matching the boy's now peaceful rhythm. His parents lingered in the doorway for a long time, unable to shake the feeling that something extraordinary was happening. This wasn't just the comfort of a pet, it felt deeper, more profound, as if Leo and Harrison shared a connection that defied explanation. As they finally retreated to their own room, questions swirled in their minds. Was this just a coincidence, or was there something they didn't understand about the bond between their son and this dog? Whatever the answer, they knew this was only the beginning of a mystery that would challenge everything they thought they knew. The parents' disbelief began subtly, almost innocuously, as they initially dismissed the idea of Harrison's attachment to Leo's bedtime presence. "It's just a phase," his mother had said with a casual shrug, believing it to be a quirky demand from a young boy who adored his new pet. His father, though slightly more skeptical, chalked it up to childhood imagination. However, their conviction started to falter the first night they heard Harrison's cries pierce the silence of their home. They rushed to his room, finding him trembling, his small frame shaking with fear as he clutched his blanket. His face was pale, and his eyes darted around the room searching for an unseen threat. Before either parent could comfort him, Leo had already leaped onto the bed, curling up beside him with a protective air. Almost instantly, Harrison's breathing slowed, his sobs reduced to soft hiccups, and his tense body relaxed as he leaned into Leo's golden fur. The transformation was so rapid it left the parents frozen in their tracks. Later, as they sat in the kitchen discussing what they had seen, doubt crept into their voices. "Maybe it's just a coincidence," his father said, though the uncertainty in his tone betrayed his words. His mother nodded but stared at the table, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing its edges. Something about the incident felt off. They tried to convince themselves it was just a dog's natural instinct to comfort, nothing more. But then, it happened again, and again. Each time the scene played out, it grew more perplexing. One evening, they watched from the doorway as Harrison tossed and turned in his bed, his whimpers growing louder with each passing second. Leo, who had been lying quietly near the door, stood abruptly and padded over to Harrison's bedside. With a gentle nudge of his nose and a soft whine, Leo climbed onto the bed. Just as before, Harrison calmed almost instantly, his breathing evening out as he drifted back to sleep. The parents began to notice subtler details. Harrison seemed unusually calm when Leo was around, especially after a bad dream. The boy would wake up some mornings visibly more rested than others, depending on whether Leo had spent the night at his side. There was a peculiar rhythm to their interactions, a silent understanding that defied explanation. What puzzled them even more was the way Leo acted. His behavior was too purposeful, too attentive for what they believed a dog was capable of. Their unease grew with time. One night, Harrison refused to let Leo leave his room, even when his parents insisted. His tearful pleas were so intense that his father gave in, allowing the dog to stay. Observing this, his mother couldn't shake the feeling that this bond wasn't just about comfort. There was something deeper, something she couldn't put into words. Soon, the parents began watching Leo's interactions with Harrison during the day. They noticed that Harrison often whispered to Leo, as though sharing secrets. Leo would respond with soft barks or quiet, almost knowing looks, tilting his head as if listening intently. The parents exchanged glances, each wondering if the other had noticed the same thing. When they finally spoke about it, their shared unease turned to outright concern. "What if there's more to this?" Harrison's mother whispered one evening. "What if we're missing something?" "I don't know," his father replied, his voice tinged with doubt. "But it's not normal, is it? A dog can't just—" He stopped, unsure of how to finish the sentence. Their skepticism persisted, but as the days turned into weeks, it became harder to deny the strange reality unfolding in front of them. They started documenting the occurrences, jotting down notes about Harrison's dreams, his interactions with Leo, and the dog's seemingly intuitive responses. Each entry added another layer to the mystery, leaving them with more questions than answers. By the time they decided to confront Harrison, their disbelief had given way to a strange mixture of fear and curiosity. They didn't know what they would discover, but they couldn't ignore the feeling that whatever was happening was beyond anything they had ever experienced. Harrison's parents began to notice subtle yet increasingly peculiar behaviors between their son and Leo. Initially, it was easy to dismiss them as mere coincidences or the result of a boy's deep affection for his new pet. But as days turned into weeks, their interactions started to display a pattern that was difficult to ignore. Leo would often sit in a vigilant, almost meditative stance near Harrison, his golden coat gleaming in the sunlight, as if he were protecting him from an unseen force. The dog's eyes would fixate intently on Harrison's face, as though trying to decipher his unspoken emotions. Whenever Harrison appeared distressed, Leo would respond instantly, often before the boy even uttered a word. It was as if Leo could sense Harrison's emotional turbulence before anyone else in the family could. One particular afternoon, Harrison was working on a puzzle at the dining table. He furrowed his brow in frustration when a piece refused to fit. Before his parents could react, Leo trotted over, placed a gentle paw on the boy's lap, and stared at him with a calm yet commanding presence. Harrison instantly relaxed, a small smile breaking through his frustration. His parents exchanged a curious glance, but chose to remain silent, chalking it up to Leo's natural instincts as a comfort animal. The most striking moments occurred during the evenings. As Harrison lay in bed reading, Leo would position himself at the foot of the bed, his ears perked and his gaze unwavering. It was as if the dog was standing guard, not against external dangers, but something internal, something invisible. On one occasion, Harrison whispered softly into the air, his lips moving as though in conversation, yet no sound reached the ears of his eavesdropping parents. Leo's ears twitched, and he let out a low, almost conversational whine, as though replying. One night, when Harrison fell asleep after a particularly restless evening, Leo climbed onto the bed without invitation. The dog lay beside him, draping his body protectively over the boy. Harrison's breathing, previously erratic, steadied into a serene rhythm. It was a transformation that left his parents both mystified and uneasy. Even during the day, subtle signals between the two became impossible to ignore. Harrison would glance at Leo with an unspoken question in his eyes, and Leo would respond with a nudge, a bark, or a wag of his tail. Once, while Harrison was in the backyard, his ball rolled under the fence. His parents watched from the kitchen window as Harrison simply stared at the ball and then at Leo. Without hesitation, Leo ran to retrieve it, bypassing the fence as if he had understood a silent command. Harrison's mother began documenting these interactions in her journal, noting every instance of what she called unspoken synchronicity. She described moments when Harrison seemed visibly agitated, only to be calmed by a simple glance from Leo. She wrote about how during a particularly stormy night, Harrison, who usually feared thunderstorms, was found sitting on the floor beside Leo, completely calm, as though the dog's presence had shielded him from his fears. As the days went by, the parents' unease grew. It wasn't just the depth of the bond that was puzzling. It was the way it seemed to transcend normal human-animal relationships. There was a certain precision, an almost eerie understanding between the two, that defied logic. Harrison's father, a man of science and reason, decided to observe more closely. One evening, he placed a small audio recorder in Harrison's room, hoping to capture evidence of this unusual connection. The next morning, he played the tape back. While much of it was static or the sounds of Harrison turning in his sleep, there were moments when Harrison's soft murmurs could be heard, interspersed with what sounded like faint rhythmic barks or growls from Leo. The timing was uncanny. almost as if they were having a conversation in their sleep. These observations weighed heavily on the parents. They debated whether to seek professional advice, unsure whether they were overreacting or on the verge of uncovering something extraordinary. The tension in the household grew, not from fear of Leo, but from the sheer magnitude of what this bond could mean. Were they witnessing a deep psychological connection, or was there something more, something unexplainable, binding their son and his dog together? Each day brought new revelations, adding to the growing tapestry of mystery. Harrison's parents oscillated between awe and anxiety, torn between wanting to understand and fearing what they might uncover. The house, once a place of normalcy, now felt like the stage for an extraordinary story unfolding right before their eyes. That evening, after Harrison had once again insisted that Leo sleep in his bed, the parents decided enough was enough. They needed answers. The constant disruption of their nightly routine and Harrison's adamant requests had reached a boiling point. The situation was puzzling, and despite their initial dismissal, something about the bond between their son and the dog felt unusually profound. Harrison sat cross-legged on his bed, nervously stroking Leo's soft golden fur as his parents entered the room. His father cleared his throat. "Harrison," he began gently, "we need to talk about why you need Leo in your bed every night. This isn't just about liking him. There's something more, isn't there?" The boy hesitated, his small hands tightening slightly around Leo's neck. The dog remained calm, his soulful eyes flicking between Harrison and the parents, as if he understood the gravity of the moment. Harrison took a deep breath, his voice shaky but resolute. "It's because he helps me," he finally admitted. His mother tilted her head in confusion. "Helps you how?" "I get these dreams," Harrison whispered, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Bad dreams. They're not like normal nightmares. They feel real, like they're happening all over again. I think they're from another life." His parents exchanged startled glances. "Another life," his father echoed, his voice laced with disbelief. Harrison nodded slowly. "In these dreams I see fire, I hear shouting, and I feel scared, so scared that I can't breathe. But then Leo is there. He talks to me, not with words like people do, but I can hear him in my head. He tells me it's okay, that I'm safe now, and he stays with me until the dreams go away." The room fell into a stunned silence. His mother took a step closer, kneeling beside the bed. "Harrison, are you saying Leo talks to you?" she asked softly, as if afraid of the answer. "Yes," Harrison replied firmly, meeting her gaze for the first time. "And he understands me too. He knows what I'm feeling, even when I don't say anything. He's the only one who can make the bad dreams stop." His father frowned, struggling to process the revelation. "But how can a dog do that? That doesn't make sense." "It's not just him," Harrison said, his voice trembling slightly. "Leo told me he used to help someone else, his old owner. He said his last owner had nightmares too, like mine. That's why he knows how to help me." Tears welled up in his mother's eyes. She reached out to touch Harrison's shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you sure, sweetie? How can you be sure it's not just your imagination?" Harrison looked at her with a quiet intensity that belied his young age. "Because I can feel it, Mom. When Leo talks to me, it's like he's inside my head. He shows me things, pictures, feelings, and they're so real. It's not just my imagination. And he remembers his old owner too. He told me about them, about how they had the same dreams and how he helped them feel better." The parents sat frozen, grappling with the weight of Harrison's words. Their skepticism warred with the sincerity in his voice and the undeniable connection they had witnessed between him and Leo. Their attention shifted to Leo, who had remained calm and watchful throughout the conversation. The dog's steady gaze seemed to hold a quiet wisdom, as if he understood far more than an ordinary animal could. Harrison gave him a reassuring pat, and for a fleeting moment the parents felt a strange sense of acknowledgement, as though the dog was silently confirming everything their son had said. Days passed, and the parents began paying closer attention to Harrison and Leo. They noticed subtle, almost imperceptible exchanges between them. A glance, a touch, a moment of stillness that seemed to speak volumes. They couldn't deny that something extraordinary was happening, something that defied explanation. Finally, one night, they decided to test the boy's claims. Harrison was tucked into bed with Leo beside him, as usual. The parent stayed up, watching discreetly from the hallway. Hours later, Harrison began to stir, his face contorting in fear. He whimpered softly, his body tense and trembling. Before they could intervene, Leo rose from his spot and gently nuzzled the boy. Harrison's breathing slowed, his features relaxing as he whispered faintly in his sleep. It was as though an invisible thread connected the two, a bond that transcended the ordinary. The parents were left speechless, their disbelief melting into awe. Whatever was happening between their son and the dog, it was real, and it was saving their child in ways they couldn't begin to understand. Harrison's parents, perplexed by their son's claims and the increasingly strange occurrences, knew they needed answers. They began by consulting a child psychologist, hoping to uncover whether Harrison's vivid flashbacks were symptoms of a deeper psychological issue. The psychologist listened carefully as Harrison described the fragmented memories that haunted him, visions of places he had never visited, faces of people he didn't know, and the overwhelming feelings of fear and sadness. Harrison's ability to articulate these experiences surprised the psychologist, who noted how these memories seemed far too specific for mere imagination or typical childhood dreams. Initially, the psychologist suggested it could be a manifestation of stress or anxiety. After all, Harrison had gone through several changes in recent months, including the adoption of Leo and perhaps a growing awareness of life's complexities. But as the psychologist dug deeper, they encountered something they couldn't explain. Harrison's detailed recollections didn't align with any events or experiences from his current life. More curiously, Harrison's descriptions often involved Leo in pivotal moments, as if the dog was actively helping him navigate these memories. The psychologist decided this was beyond their expertise and recommended consulting an animal behaviorist. The family's next step was meeting with an experienced animal behaviorist, someone who specialized in the emotional and cognitive abilities of dogs. The behaviorist observed Leo's interactions with Harrison over several sessions. It became clear that the bond between the boy and the dog was extraordinary. Leo exhibited a heightened awareness of Harrison's emotional state, often reacting before Harrison even vocalized distress. The behaviorist noted that while dogs are naturally intuitive and empathetic, Leo's actions suggested something more complex, almost as though he could anticipate and respond to Harrison's unspoken needs. When Harrison described feeling an unspoken understanding with Leo, the behaviorist raised the possibility of telepathic communication. Though they were skeptical, they couldn't deny the evidence in front of them. The family's account of Leo's behavior, paired with their observations, suggested a connection far beyond what science could comfortably explain. The behaviorist admitted this was a rare phenomenon and recommended reaching out to researchers in parapsychology for additional insights. Reluctantly, Harrison's parents contacted a group specializing in the study of telepathic communication and interspecies connection. These experts, though accustomed to skepticism, were intrigued by the case. They conducted controlled experiments with Harrison and Leo, designed to eliminate the possibility of coincidence or subconscious cues. In one test, Harrison was asked to think of a specific command, without speaking, moving, or signaling, and focus solely on Leo. Remarkably, Leo responded correctly multiple times, as though he had heard Harrison's thoughts directly. This left the researchers astounded. The family's journey didn't stop with science. They sought out spiritual healers and mediums, hoping for a more holistic understanding of the bond between Harrison and Leo. One healer suggested that Leo might be a reincarnated soul with a purpose to guide and protect Harrison. Another medium connected the family's experience to the idea of karmic ties, explaining that Harrison and Leo might share a connection from a past life. While these interpretations leaned heavily into spirituality, the family couldn't ignore how accurately they resonated with their experiences. Over time, experts from both scientific and mystical disciplines began collaborating to explore the connection. Skepticism was rife, but many who observed Harrison and Leo's interactions couldn't deny what they saw. Researchers began documenting the phenomenon, treating it as a groundbreaking case of human-animal communication. The story of Harrison and Leo began to challenge conventional understandings of consciousness, empathy, and the bonds we share with animals. For Harrison's parents, what started as a quest for answers transformed into a profound lesson in trust and open-mindedness. The journey to understand the bond between their son and Leo led them to a deeper appreciation of life's mysteries, where science and spirituality intersected in unexpected ways. Through this process, they came to realize that some connections defy explanation, existing not to be understood but simply to be cherished. The therapeutic process began as a cautious exploration of Harrison's troubling flashbacks, guided by the calming presence of Leo and the expertise of child psychologists and animal behaviorists. Harrison's parents were initially skeptical about involving professionals, uncertain whether anyone could understand the unique bond their son shared with the golden retriever. However, as the episodes of night terrors grew more intense, they realized the necessity of external help. Leo's role became even more pronounced during the initial therapy sessions. Whenever Harrison grew anxious or hesitant to speak, Leo would gently nudge his arm or rest his head on the boy's lap. This simple act of connection allowed Harrison to open up in ways he never had before. His therapists noticed how Harrison's demeanor shifted when Leo was near, a once timid and restless child transformed into someone calm and reflective. The process of confronting the flashbacks was not easy. Harrison often described his dreams with vivid detail, moments of being trapped, feelings of helplessness, and recurring scenes of an unknown life. These dreams would leave him shaken, unsure of what was real and what was imagined. Leo, as if sensing Harrison's unease, would position himself protectively by the boy's side, sometimes licking his hands or lying close enough that their breaths seemed to synchronize. Therapists used these moments to guide Harrison gently through his emotions. With Leo as a steady anchor, they introduced creative techniques such as drawing, storytelling, and guided meditation to help Harrison express his thoughts. Over time, Harrison began drawing not only the haunting images from his flashbacks, but also comforting scenes of himself and Leo, often depicting the dog as a guardian figure standing between him and his fears. Harrison's nights began improving gradually. While the flashbacks didn't disappear overnight, their intensity lessened. On nights when the dreams did resurface, Leo's presence seemed to act as a barrier. Harrison would instinctively reach for the dog, feeling a sense of safety that no words could replicate. His parents, observing these changes, grew increasingly convinced of the profound, almost mystical connection between their son and Leo. As Harrison grew stronger emotionally, his therapist introduced the concept of empowerment. They encouraged him to see himself as more than a victim of his past life's memories. With Leo's support, Harrison began to embrace his unique story, finding strength in the idea that he had survived something profound and could now move forward. One particularly emotional moment came during a therapy session, when Harrison, for the first time, spoke without hesitation about a recurring flashback that had tormented him. As he described the scene, his voice trembling, Leo walked up to him, pressing his head against Harrison's chest. It was as if the dog understood every word. Harrison broke into tears, not of fear, but of relief, finally feeling unburdened by the weight of his memories. Over the months, Harrison's confidence grew. He began participating in activities he had once avoided, such as playing with other children and attending school events. His laughter, once rare and fleeting, became a regular sound in the household. His parents marveled at the transformation, grateful for the role Leo played in their son's recovery. Harrison's relationship with Leo deepened further, evolving from one of dependency to one of partnership. While the dog had initially been his protector, Harrison now saw himself as Leo's equal, determined to repay the love and support he had received. This shift marked a turning point in Harrison's journey, a sign that he was truly healing. The culmination of this progress came during a family outing to a park. Watching Harrison run alongside Leo, his carefree laughter echoing in the open air, his parents realized just how far their son had come. It was a moment of pure joy, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unspoken power of a loyal companion. Harrison slowly began to notice the changes within himself. The dreams that had once haunted his nights, those vivid, terrifying memories of a life he didn't even remember living, had started to fade. The weight on his chest, the inexplicable anxiety, the feeling of being trapped in a story that wasn't his own, all of it had diminished. Leo, his steadfast companion, had been by his side every step of the way, guiding him through the darkness with his silent but powerful presence. One evening, as the golden rays of the setting sun streamed into his room, Harrison sat cross-legged on his bed, stroking Leo's soft fur. The dog's calm, soulful eyes seemed to hold an understanding far beyond what words could convey. Harrison felt an overwhelming rush of gratitude. "Leo," he whispered, his voice catching in his throat. "You've been my hero. I don't know how you knew what I needed, but you did. You always did." Leo tilted his head slightly, his ears perking up, as if he understood every word. Harrison chuckled softly, wiping away a tear. "I don't think I'll ever be able to thank you enough. You've been more than a friend. You've been my guide, my protector, and my hope. I don't think I would have made it through without you." As Harrison spoke, his parents stood quietly by the door, watching the exchange with tears in their eyes. They had seen their son transform from a boy burdened by inexplicable fears into a confident, joyful child. And they knew that Leo had been the key to that transformation. Later that evening, the family gathered in the living room. Harrison took the opportunity to express his gratitude to his parents as well. "Mom, Dad," he began, his voice steady but emotional. "I know it must have been hard to believe everything I told you about Leo and my dreams, but you stood by me. You believed in me when it felt like no one else could. Thank you." His parents exchanged a glance, their hearts full. "Harrison," his mom said gently, "we are so proud of you. You've shown so much strength and courage. And Leo has been a gift we never expected but needed more than anything." Harrison smiled and looked at Leo, who was lying at his feet, his tail wagging softly. The dog's mere presence seemed to fill the room with warmth and love. Harrison leaned down and hugged him tightly. "Leo, you've done so much for me. It's time for you to relax now. You don't have to sleep in my bed anymore. I'm okay now thanks to you." That night, for the first time in months, Harrison slept without Leo by his side. The room felt a little emptier, but it also felt lighter, as if a chapter had closed and a new one was beginning. In the days that followed, the family's gratitude for Leo only deepened. They celebrated him not just as a pet, but as a member of the family who had saved Harrison's life in ways they could barely comprehend. They decided to commemorate his role by creating a scrapbook filled with photos and memories of the journey they had shared. Harrison wrote a heartfelt letter to Leo, which his parents helped him frame and hang on the wall. As Harrison moved forward, he carried the lessons Leo had taught him, the power of connection, the importance of trust, and the healing strength of love. And while Leo no longer needed to sleep in Harrison's bed, their bond remained unbreakable, a testament to the incredible relationship between humans and their animal companions. For the family, Leo was not just a dog. He was a miracle, a guardian, and a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is always light to be found if you look in the right place. Harrison, now free from his fears, would grow up with this lesson etched into his heart, and Leo would always be remembered as the hero who made it all possible. The family's story began to spread beyond their immediate circle, and as soon as it reached the ears of friends, neighbors, and even local news outlets, the reactions were as varied as the people themselves. Some people were enchanted by the tale, their faces lighting up with wonder, unable to hide the amazement in their eyes as they marveled at the connection between Harrison and Leo. For them, it was a miraculous story that resonated with something deep within, the belief in the extraordinary, the power of unconditional love, and the mysterious ways in which the universe sometimes aligns to make the impossible seem real. On the other hand, there were skeptics. Some people, unable to comprehend the telepathic communication between a boy and a dog, dismissed it as mere coincidence or an elaborate figment of the imagination. Others believed the family might have experienced some sort of shared delusion, maybe even a collective wishful thinking. These individuals questioned the scientific validity of the events and challenged the notion that such an extraordinary bond could exist outside the realms of what was considered scientifically acceptable. The mixed reactions left the family with a sense of confusion and isolation. Harrison's parents, initially reluctant to share the story beyond their close circle, began to feel the weight of judgment and disbelief. They found themselves defending their experience, constantly explaining that they were not embellishing or exaggerating, but were simply recounting what had happened. But even in the face of skepticism, they felt unwavering in their conviction that what had transpired was undeniably real. After all, they had lived it. Yet, amid the mixed responses, the family also found a sense of unity that they hadn't expected. They realized that, in a world that often celebrated logic and reason above all else, their story had touched something intangible, something that could not be quantified or explained by science alone. It had reminded people of the mysteries that still exist in the world, the inexplicable forces that guide us, and the deeper connections we share with the creatures around us. Harrison, now more mature and understanding of the world's reaction, sat with his parents one evening as they reflected on everything that had happened. His mother, a gentle soul who had always been open to the unexplainable, admitted that she sometimes still couldn't believe the depth of the bond between her son and Leo. "It's as if they shared something more than just the space in our home," she said, her voice tinged with both awe and a touch of sadness. "Sometimes I wonder if there's more to this world than we can understand." His father, more pragmatic by nature but equally affected by the experience, nodded in agreement. "We always told you to keep your heart open to the world, to people and to animals," he said. "But what happened here has taught me something more. It's taught me that life doesn't always make sense, and sometimes we can't rely on logic to explain the most profound moments of our existence." Harrison, who had spent weeks processing the depth of his experience, finally spoke up. "I've been thinking about all of this too. When I was going through those nightmares, it felt like I was trapped in someone else's life. But Leo helped me, not with words, but with his presence, with his quiet understanding." He paused, his eyes brimming with emotion. "I think he understood me in a way no one else could. Maybe he helped me because he knew what it was like to go through something that scary. I don't know if it was telepathy or just something bigger, but it saved me, and maybe we're all connected in ways we can't explain." The conversation continued long into the night, each family member grappling with the lessons they had learned from this remarkable experience. The family realized that their story wasn't just about a boy and his dog. It was about something much deeper. It was about the importance of believing in the unexplainable, the power of compassion, and the idea that sometimes when all seems lost, the universe sends help in forms we can't fathom. They talked about the power of kindness and how it could transcend barriers. The love and loyalty Leo had shown to Harrison were clear manifestations of unconditional care, something that transcended words or scientific reasoning. It reminded them all that the bonds we form, whether with humans or animals, have the power to heal, to guide, and to transform us in profound ways. By the end of the conversation, Harrison's parents understood that their lives had been altered in ways they hadn't yet fully grasped. Their son had experienced something truly extraordinary, and while the world might question or doubt it, they no longer needed validation from anyone else. They had witnessed the truth of it in their own home, in the quiet moments of understanding between a boy and his dog. "We may never fully understand why this happened," his mother said softly, "but we do know one thing: it changed us all. And maybe that's enough to believe in the miracles, big or small, that we are lucky enough to experience." For Harrison, the future held both a sense of awe and a renewed sense of responsibility. He understood the importance of the story he had lived through and the lessons he had learned from it. He was determined to carry this lesson of kindness, empathy, and unshakable belief in the extraordinary with him as he grew older. He knew that no matter what life threw at him, the bond he shared with Leo would always be there, an unwavering reminder that miracles do happen, and sometimes they come in the form of a golden retriever who understands you in a way no one else ever could. And as Harrison's family continued to share their story with others, they encountered more people whose lives were touched by the tale. The story of a boy and his dog wasn't just about the healing power of friendship. It was about the wonder and mystery of life itself, reminding everyone that sometimes the greatest gifts come in forms we could never imagine. The story of Harrison and Leo is one that transcends the ordinary and ventures deep into the realms of the extraordinary. Their bond, which began as a simple companionship between a boy and his newly adopted dog, quickly evolved into something far beyond what anyone could have ever predicted. It was not merely the friendship between a child and an animal, it was a connection that defied logic, science, and any conventional understanding of the world. It was a relationship forged in a way that suggested a higher meaning, one that spoke to the very heart of healing, empathy, and an almost mystical understanding that life sometimes brings us forces beyond our comprehension. For Harrison, Leo became far more than just a pet. The golden retriever was not only a companion through his childhood, but a silent protector, guide, and confidant. The dog helped Harrison navigate the most challenging parts of his existence, flashbacks to a traumatic past life that haunted him. These dark memories were no longer something Harrison had to face alone. Through telepathic communication, Leo bridged the gap between human suffering and the animal world, offering solace in a way that felt both ancient and inexplicably beautiful. It wasn't just that Leo was a dog. He was a force of nature, an embodiment of compassion and understanding, responding to Harrison's unspoken pain with a kind of wisdom that only animals seem to possess. As time passed and the flashbacks began to diminish, Harrison's transformation became evident. The nightmares, the distressing images that had plagued him for so long, slowly faded into the background. What had once been a terrifying, relentless presence in his life became a distant memory, overshadowed by a newfound sense of peace. This wasn't just the result of therapy or scientific intervention. It was the outcome of a miraculous bond, a bond that went far beyond the physical realm and entered the realm of the unexplained. It was a relationship that demonstrated the raw power of empathy and the profound impact of unconditional love, even from the most unexpected of sources. The presence of Leo in Harrison's life reminded everyone around them of the importance of compassion. It was a vivid example of how love, even from an animal, can transcend barriers that human beings sometimes struggle to overcome. The lessons learned through their journey weren't just about the importance of caring for one another. They were about the unspoken ways in which animals can impact human lives. Leo didn't just act as a guardian for Harrison's well-being. He offered him a quiet but profound sense of security that allowed Harrison to heal in ways that people, with all their knowledge and expertise, never could. For Harrison, the day he was able to sleep soundly without the fear of flashbacks or night terrors marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. The resilience he developed, the trust he had in Leo, and the understanding he gained of the world around him were qualities that would shape his future. Harrison's bright future now lay ahead of him, no longer burdened by the shadows of the past. Instead, he carried with him a deep appreciation for the present moment and a sense of hope for the future, qualities that Leo had instilled in him through their silent yet deeply meaningful bond. Leo, too, left an indelible mark on the family. As the days went by, the bond between Harrison and his beloved golden retriever only deepened. Leo became not just a family pet, but a symbol of strength, resilience, and the incredible capacity of animals to understand and connect with humans on a level that is often overlooked. The gratitude that Harrison's family felt toward Leo was immeasurable. They saw their son not just as a child who had overcome his fears, but as a young boy whose life had been forever changed by the selfless love of an animal. The story of Harrison and Leo serves as a reminder to all of us that love is not confined to human interactions alone. Animals, too, have the power to heal, protect, and uplift us in ways we may never fully understand. Their intuition, their sensitivity to human emotion, and their unwavering loyalty can transform the lives of those around them. What happened to Harrison is not something that can be easily explained, but it is something that touched the hearts of those who witnessed it and left an imprint on the world. In the end, this story isn't just about a boy and a dog. It's about the powerful connection between all living beings. It's about the miracles that happen when we open our hearts to one another, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and trust in the kindness that can be found in even the most unexpected places. Harrison's journey, with Leo by his side, is a testament to the power of empathy, the importance of unconditional love, and the inexplicable ways in which animals can change the course of our lives. As Harrison moves forward, his future is now one filled with promise, and as for Leo, his legacy will live on, not just in the hearts of Harrison and his family, but in the countless lives touched by their remarkable story. In the quiet, gentle way that only a dog could, Leo showed everyone what it truly means to love, to heal, and to be a silent guardian in someone's life. It is a legacy that will never be forgotten, and a bond that will always be cherished.